Meet sailing yacht Avanti and her crew, Gerard and Jacqueline. We left Cape Town in December 2021 on our floating home, heading west on an adventure of a lifetime around the world.
We have left Fatuhiva and we are on our way to Tauwata, which has a few anchorages to choose from and is home to the only white sandy beaches in the Marquesas. We decide to head over to the anchorage where the village is first, still trying to find the baguettes that we loved in Hivaua and haven't seen since. We've come around to Tauwata. It's about 40 nautical miles from Fatuhiva. So it was a very fast sail. The wind was really stronger than predicted. We did 7 average on quite an easy broad reach. Or actually we had to go on a deep broad reach. So the sail was flapping a bit, but the anchorage here is extremely gusty. We came in here in the lee of the island and it was quite quiet, but when you approach the anchorage we got a gust of I think 35 knots. Luckily we just put the sails down, but anchoring here it's quite deep on the back row. We're not in the front row, there's a few boats here, but it's gusting from 5 knots to 30 knots. When we got here we had to take the bimini off. It actually broke some of the webbing, the stuff that you tighten the webbing with. And it's calmed down a lot now. It's just gusting up to 20. But I was really worried that we would almost rip out the cleat. Because it's one thing if it blows constantly at 20 or 25 knots. But when it gusts like that, the boat turns completely beam onto the wind. And it kind of jerks against the anchor. So not a great anchorage. Hopefully we get some sleep tonight.
It was a horrible night's sleep, but the next day started the right way, with spinner dolphins coming into the bay and giving us a little morning show. We are leaving Tuaata Island, just next to Hivaua, and we're on our way to Nukahiva. Nukahiva is a really amazing island we've heard, so we're really excited. It's a 90-mile journey, so we've left just after just before sunset, and we should get there around well after sunrise in the morning for the 90 miles. The wind looks good, we'll see if it lasts, and we're excited to get there. The Marquesans actually speak a whole different language there as well, so South and North Marquesas are quite different, so excited to see something new. Enjoyed the welcoming celebrations for the cruise ship that seemed to be following us around, and then went for a walk around the bay of Ta'iaua. It was definitely a lot more touristy than the other islands we've explored. Some of those islands can only be reached by ferry, but it does not go between the islands often.
Walking around town, the streets are filled with Toyota Hiluxes, but they seem to be newer models compared to the other islands, and there's even a restaurant or two to be found here. Tiki Tuhiva is a sculpture of two tikis on Tuhiva Hill. It was constructed recently by 3 sculptors and completed in 2017. The female tiki stands tall at 12 meters and looks over the bay. She is the guardian of tradition and knowledge. The smaller male tiki represents a warrior who is showing his power. Our next stop was the main cathedral in the village. It's only a few kilometers down the main road to get there.
The open-air Notre Dame Cathedral in the center of town was beautifully decorated over the Easter weekend. After the walk, we went to one of the Easter celebration pop-up restaurants called Chef Jacqueline. We took it as a sign to go here to try the famous Marquesian poisson cru, yellowfin tuna in what I thought would be a lime juice, but it was more sweet, like a pickle juice, with some salad and rice. It's a stunning morning in Nuku Hiva, and it's time for us to go for a hike before we leave this bay and head over to the next one.
This is the main bay in Nuku Hiva, which is formed by the crater of the volcano that erupted here when the island was born. The tap water in town is not potable, and many locals are seen walking around with 1-liter plastic bottles. The islanders may use a lot of plastic, but recycling stations are found throughout the island, and we could see it being used by all. It's really refreshing to see the cleanliness of all the Marquesian islands compared to some of the Caribbean islands that's really polluted. It was strange to end our nature experience by walking past the island's power station with diesel generators humming away.
The island is also home to the only hospital and has a large fresh fruit market, making it a very popular stop for cruisers to fill their provisions before heading over to the remote Tuamotus.
Today I'm tasting the first French Polynesian beer. It's called Hinano, and it's got a little local lady on the label. It's brewed in Tahiti. We believe there's only one brewery in Tahiti. We've only seen these, and I think they brew Heineken under license in Tahiti as well. So these are distributed all over the islands, and you can even return the glass bottle for deposit. So this is just a normal lager, and it's got 5% alcohol, and this is a 500 ml bottle. You also do get 500 ml cans, and you also get a 330 ml can, but it seems like they're quite into the recycling and washing the bottles, which is a good thing. So yeah, I'm quite excited to taste my first beer of the French Polynesian Islands. It's quite a crisp and refreshing lager, very similar to some of the Colombian beers, but it's got some distinct flavor to it, so I quite like it. The brewery was established in 1955, so they've been going for more than 50 years. I don't know what they did before that for beer, but in terms of a rating for this one, it's a pretty good tasting lager. I like the size of the bottles and the recycling, and 5% alcohol content. It is very expensive though. Beer on these islands are extremely expensive, so if you buy it and you return a deposit, this one is about $3.50, $3.50 US dollars, so quite expensive, and I think they actually make it expensive to keep the locals from drinking too much beer. But yeah, in terms of a rating for this lager, 7.5 out of 10. We've been, well, when we left Panama, somebody told us we must bring in rum because it's extremely expensive here. So we just bought a few bottles of rum for ourselves in Panama. But there is actually a local rum, it looks like, that's not that expensive. But we've seen whiskey, and just normal whiskey like J&B or Jack Daniels, that's about $120 per bottle. So like in the range of 2,000 South African rands for a normal bottle of whiskey. So in hindsight, we should have probably brought some whiskey in and sell it, but they don't allow you to do that. But whiskey is extremely expensive.
The hike that we'd been looking forward to most was the waterfall hike of Daniels Bay, or locally known as Hanaveva. It costs 1,000 francs to go on the walk, payable at the first house on the left. The walk between the homes to the hike was stunning, and friendly locals gave us fruit as usual as we passed by and asked us where we come from. They're always surprised when we say Africa instead of Europe or the Americas. We wouldn't go so far as to call this a hike. It's more a walk through some streams to go to the waterfall. And one really shouldn't do this without mosquito protection. I was eaten alive, and the bite marks stayed for almost a week after the walk. We found it! Whew.
The waterfall is hidden behind the rocks, so even though we couldn't see much of it, the walk there was still very beautiful and we really enjoyed it. After our hike to the waterfall, we got back to the beach and launched the dinghy. And on our way back to Avanti, our 2 horsepower Yamaha outboard started huffing and puffing a little bit, and it died on us. So we had to row back, and I decided, well, it didn't want to start after that, or it started and it was running not great. You could hear there was something not good. So I suspect there was some dirt in the carb, so I've just taken off the engine cover and I took off the carburetor, and in the float bowl you could see there was like a little bit of, it's almost like little rocks. It's weird, there's no strainer or filter between the petrol tank and the carburetor, so I actually might add a little filter, but yeah, I hope it's that. I cleaned out the carb completely with carb cleaner, so hopefully it runs when we try it again. The moment of truth. So we have now also changed the spark plug. The carburetor issue was definitely not the only issue, or wasn't the real issue. So let's see if she starts now.
While we were on our hike yesterday, we met some locals, or greeted some locals, and they gave us some pamplemousse. So this is the fruit, and they grow everywhere on these islands. So it's like a grapefruit. You can't eat the white, so it's not like an orange where you can eat the segments like that. So what the locals do, same as us, is we cut out the segments and eat it with a spoon. They mix the juice as well with some orange and lime juice, and then, you know, it's a very nice juice. The taste is like, it's not as bitter as a grapefruit, it's more sweet, but also not too sweet. It's got more of a lime flavor, so definitely a really nice citrus, and we're really happy to have a bunch of them on board to take with us to the Tuamotus when we leave tomorrow. In the Marquesas, we haven't really found restaurants. There's been maybe one or two that we've seen in Nuku Hiva's main bay, but really not anywhere else. And that means that when you arrive in a smaller bay, sometimes the locals will invite you to their home for a meal, because they know foreigners want to experience the cuisine. So you pay a small fee, depends on which island you go to, and then you can eat with the locals, and they serve you what they would traditionally eat. If I don't get eaten by mosquitoes alive before we get there. Ready for lunch?
Yes, can't wait. More tuna. We have some yellowfin tuna on the barbecue. It was made on the barbecue. Some, I think, plantain or cooked banana and breadfruit. And some homemade juice. This is from pamplemousse, orange and lime juice.
Join us next week as we head for the lagoons of the Tuamotu atolls. Thank you for our patrons who support the making of these videos. If you want to help and can't be a patron, like our videos, leave a comment, and even subscribing really helps show our videos to new people on YouTube. See you next week.